Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of First Impressions. Today is Nativo. So First Impressions, for those of you who don't know, is the ad tech unboxing video series, right? Where we ask vendors and solution providers in our space to kind of walk us through what their solutions are, and we add that to our library so that ad operations people are able to go in and look at a particular product, maybe share that with a colleague so that they can understand a concept, a product, understand again what the potential opportunity is with a particular feature. So with that being said, let's dive right in. This is what we do, Eugene. We dive right in. We want to understand what architecting the future of advertising. It's a big statement, Eugene. Why don't you walk us through Nativo and what your goals are?
Sure. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate the opportunity. So I'm Eugene Cherney. I am the head of product at Nativo. I'm trained product manager, and actually my background goes back to engineering, which means I actually have no feelings. So you can't hurt them by asking questions. Please do. Let me give you a little bit of a historical background with that intro on Nativo, and then I'll walk you through the platform. So let's see, we've been around since 2012. We hold 8 patents in native and sponsored content. So we actually own some of those key IP. And we've got our advertising powering thousands of sites and over 100 media companies using our tech to power their most premium direct sold ad offerings. So a high level of what we do, we're helping publishers with an enterprise grade ad platform build scalable branded content and general advertising businesses. And that's outside of the traditional display ecosystem. So what do I mean by this traditional decades old display ecosystem? We're talking about publishers selling unique branded content ad programs directly to their largest marketers. And you can think of the most premium publisher content studios like Hearst, Story Studio, or BBC's Storyworks Studio. And what they're doing is, you can imagine a content-based experience. Some people call it native, some people call it sponsored content, some people call it branded content. Regardless of the nomenclature, it's an integrated experience that's really immersive. And we power those ad offerings for large publishers. They're huge revenue drivers, and it's typically the crown jewel of their sales program. So that's the high level of what Nativo does and why publishers use our platform.
So it's really, again, outside of display, right? And that means it can take many different forms based on what the publisher wants, what the marketer wants. I think that's an interesting idea, right? Because it gets a certain level of creativity that you can start to think about in terms of what's going to work and what assets and pieces you have to kind of put together to kind of construct that. One thing that I think that I know I'm going to be kind of thinking about as you go through this is, I know many a publisher who does, again, whether you call it native, sponsored content, branded content, there are kind of ways to do it, right? Kind of, scotch tape things together, kind of, kind of handle it in that particular way. And I think the thing is that you're providing or creating an experience that's above and beyond that. So I think that's the one thing that I think probably most publishers are going to be looking at is, oh, there we go. That's why I want, a car instead of a bicycle, that kind of thing in terms of that. I don't know if that was a good analogy, but that's the first one that popped in my mind. So yeah, I think Eugene, underlying this, I think that's the underlying question I'm going to have is going like, again, this is not something I could easily do myself or cobble together, that this is a true, real differentiator.
That's right. I mean, and what one of my publishers told me was like, yeah, it's not that we hadn't done this before. We had crazy glued and duct tape some programs like this in the past, but this tech helped us make a business and make this repeatable and empower the sales process. And so that's what we're trying to do. And that's what I want to show you. And I think probably the best way to start is to give you a sense of the consumer experience, see what that is like a normal person surfing the web, and then we'll work our way into the tech. and take a
Makes
look at
sense.
how creative is done and how trafficking is done. So if you're ready, I'll dive in.
Dive in. Let's see some product. Let's see some ads.
Cool. So we'll start with a publisher that we work with called Entrepreneur. They're one of our oldest customers. So what you imagine and I just want to preamble this with, we're going to see a bunch of desktop here, but we're running on desktop, mobile web, and mobile app. Desktop just looks better on Zoom, so I can impress you. All right. So here we are at Entrepreneur. We're scrolling through the feed, and we see sponsored content, right? You'll notice that it looks just like all the other ads, or just like all the other content, just like the organic content on the site. We made it, we've called it out as sponsored. That's what you need to do. We've given a little bit of a different background, but this is actually an ad, and it's actually being served through our tech, not through the publisher's content management system. And the cool thing about this is, like, look, this is all individual components, headlines, preview image, preview text. This is all being served, and it looks just like the organic part of the site. And what I can do is actually click through and see that the actual content itself appears on Entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about advertising, we talk about the ad, it's that full experience all the way through. Okay.
Right.
Built in, you'll see later that we actually host all of that content within, and it's a full share of voice. So you can see that, you know, we've got some components here from Twitter and Facebook, and maybe there are some additional branding that Sony might want to put in. They control the entire experience on that Entrepreneur site, which is pretty cool. But what if we also had exactly the same content on Rob Report? There it is. Totally different layout, completely different design, totally different fonts, right? It looks just like it's supposed to on Rob Report. And when I click through, again, same thing here. Full share of voice, full content experience on the landing page.
And so you have, if I'm jumping ahead, I apologize, but again, you've got all of these little components and assets. And again, well, I think you'll talk to that, but there's a part of it that gives you that flexibility to, again, integrate it into the page itself and stay kind of within an environment, which, you know, I think lends, you know, credibility to the ad, that it's still within the Rob Report, right? That it still has that, and yet it's still clearly labeled that it is in fact sponsored content. You know, less disruptive, launching off to another site into who knows where, kind of has that feel to it, that you're still in a safe, trusted environment. I like that.
That's right. Yeah. And I mean, if you're thinking about it from a publisher's perspective, look, a 300 by 250 can run on any publisher. You can run ads native on Facebook and just get plain old native. But if you want something that's very specific to the publisher, that has the magic pixie dust of that publisher's brand, the 300 by 250 is not going to do that for you. A content kind of an execution and the kind of integrated experience that we offer gives a lot more power to the publisher's direct sales partner. Okay, so back to the tech. So the cool thing is, now you've assembled this ad, you've got the whole experience on the landing page. Lots of things happen here. Now you can measure this landing page, something a publisher couldn't do before. They had no visibility into what happened after the click, right? That means you can provide more insight to the buyers. You can actually see what happens, what people convert. Maybe this landing page has, you know, a lead gen form on it. It all happens within the same domain. So a lot of these cross-domain cookie problems start to go away. Again, more power to the publisher. So this kind of execution is really important. The other thing that this does is it gives the advertiser a chance to talk, a chance to engage. If I'm buying expensive new headphones, I'm going to spend some time thinking about it. I'm not going to do a click here, buy now. So this kind of an execution gives a unique tool for publishers to sell, a unique marketing tool that you can't get anywhere else.
And it can include things like video and lead forms, as you said, right? So you can really build up quite the assets there.
Yeah, we'll see what we'll take a look at that creative in just a minute. But now, okay, so this is great, and that's where Nativo started, right? Is this end-to-end execution. But it turns out that once you're assembling ads on the screen like this out of their components, There are lots of different things that you can do. This becomes not just a sponsored content slot. It's really an omni slot for all sorts of content and native and integrated ad experiences. So let me show you another one. So here we are on Rob Report. Again, I'm going to show you exactly the same slot just to show you that you can do something very, very different. And here we've got a video experience that's scroll to play, muted to start, and it uses exactly the same slot. And the cool thing is with our platform, these things all compete together. So these slots become omni slots that can host all sorts of different kinds of creative. Another kind of content execution, maybe we want something, we've done a lot of desktop, let's do a little mobile. How are all the kids consuming content today? Through stories, right? So here's Rob Report Mobile, and here's a story ad. Also a content experience. We think of this as like the baby step into content. It's a lighter lift because it's interactive, it's visual, and you can kind of use existing assets to put it together. A lot of times publishers like to ease their marketers into content with a story, kind of an ad first, because usually they have images and videos that they can just throw in and assemble or sometimes reuse. Social assets, also driven by our platform, also able to run in exactly the same slots. So you don't have to have individual bits and pieces of tech all across your site to run all of these different executions.
That, Eugene, that makes me think of, one of the challenges I've had in the past is, again, creative agencies or agencies sometimes struggle getting you enough variations of creative headlines to all that, in a display universe, right? They're just, we don't get enough creative. And then you start to try to work them down the path of going toward like a creative services solution where you can do like kind of like rich media ads. This has the kind of the additional piece of going like, give me what you've got, right? And it can be, again, like, give me different headlines. We can work on that. Maybe that's, again, something you as a publisher offer is someone that's got that skill set or whatever. And much easier things like you get to put it out there, test it, see what works. Because you've kind of unbundled this away from having to create this one little small display package into something that's just going to display within the page into a format you've already kind of approved.
Yep. So we have, obviously there's a lot to making this work. Like I said, you can crazy glue and duct tape this stuff together, but actually making it into a business, into a process, into an operation requires figuring out the creative, making the tech work and making the serving work, all of that, and the engine underneath. And so we've kind of addressed each of those pieces. And one of the first starting points is people say, oh, I don't have content. I don't know what to do. And the reality is everybody's got content. And so you can always start with images and assets and do something that's a lighter lift, like a story ad. You can always go back to the brand and say, well, you've actually got content on your blog. I can ingest that. So we have tools that automatically will pull in content on the web and turn it into an ad just like that and run it right away. And then you can kind of stepwise go into a more immersive kind of, full service kind of experience where you're creating content as a publisher on behalf of your marketer. So, okay, last ad execution here I just wanted to show you is, let me refresh. So if you want more of a visual experience that happens right in the feed, we also have a carousel type ad format that works really well for all sorts of product introductions, travel, very visual kinds of things. So it's similar to a story experience, but it happens right within that feed. So we try and provide tools all across the spectrum of what a publisher needs to sell these unique executions. Okay, so let's talk about creative a little bit, because I know that now that we've looked at the nuts and bolts, let's kind of take a look at what you can do and what are the opportunities here. So here's another ad. We're back to the entrepreneur. What I want you to do is pay attention to this image and this headline. I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to change, but it's going to be the same ad. So I'll refresh. So, all right, different headline, different preview image. That time the headline changed, the image didn't. Okay, we got a different image. What's happening is that, and this is in demo mode, so it's just going to keep cycling through. But what's happening is that the underlying optimization system is actually trying to pick the best combination of image and headline for this particular slot. This is something that's actually quite hard to do in a display environment. We have that capability built directly into the core of the tech.
Right.
And in fact, yeah.
I'm sorry. So you're optimizing. So you're able to optimize what the image is, what the headline is, what this particular ad part is. Does the conversion on the landing page factor into that optimization as well?
Yeah, so that would be a very cool trick if we can actually include the engagement that happens on the landing page as a signal to tell us which headlines are the best. Because the initial click may or may, I mean, I can put a celebrity's name in the headline and get people to click, but that may not actually drive engagement with the content. So our system actually will look at that engagement with the content and optimize toward that.
Very cool.
So even as we're looking at a bunch of flashy stuff and pictures, what you have to understand, think about is the engine underneath that's driving all of this. The other thing that you have to keep in mind is that each of these slots are different, and you might have multiple sponsored slots across this page. So what we also want to do is not just think about how to make this particular creative work really well, but to figure out whether it works best here or down there. And our system also will optimize for all of those signals for placement as well as for creative combination across sites as well, if you happen to have multiple sites. Okay, so then we want to click through. What can we do with this thing? All right, so we just saw an editorial kind of style with the Sony ad. I'm going to click through and we're going to see a fully immersive experience now. So now you got the right rails got blown away. We're seeing video, we're seeing a much more immersive experience. And now the creative is really shining, and the publisher can add a ton of value by doing these great landing page experiences. By the way, you can also A/B test the landing page too. So if you have multiple versions of this, we can have it rotate through and figure out the best one, the best combination of all of those pieces.
Very cool.
Cool. All right, so we talked about creative. We talked about the different ad formats. So like now I'm sure people's heads are swimming and going, this is great, but come on, how do I actually manage this? I'm going to have to get all these teams working together. And one of the things that we found was that these are different people. Like the people who are doing the editorial are different from the people who are doing the ads, and there are different needs. So they want separate tools. We've actually separated out the entire process. So the people who are responsible for the advertising and the sales program have their own environment. You don't ever need to mess with what's happening on your editorial side as a publisher. So let's take a look at how that creative actually lives in the platform. This is the creative library. This is actually looking at one of the creatives you saw earlier. And you can see that it's actually starts with multiple pieces, right? So like, it's not just the one picture and the one headline and the preview text. It's actually multiple pieces, and I can just drag and drop as many as I want here, and the system will automatically know what to do with them. Not only that, but we have to think kind of deeply about how this works. This is not a 300 by 250 that's going to look the same everywhere. So I really better make sure that this poor lady's head doesn't get cut off, right?
Right.
So our system automatically crops that properly and makes sure that it fits well within every single ad slot.
That's very good.
Copy and paste a bunch of headlines in, manage them one at a time, preview text. So it's all here. And not only that, but the content is actually hosted here. So we have a full content editor that allows you to create the content built right in, lots of different tools to make that work. You can add more variations here. You can add companion assets that appear on the right rail if the page has a right rail in that execution. And then last step is, what does this thing really look like? So we have built-in preview tools that allow you to actually preview the ad right inside the platform. This helps with approvals. So once you get into this level of sophistication, approvals become an issue, but it also helps with the sales process because you can actually share this out with your buyer and it becomes a sales tool. Because the number one thing is, okay, great, I kind of get the concept, but what's my creative going to look like on that site? Got it all built in. So.
In terms of the content, just going back to 1 second for the content piece. So you have to work with the publisher on their branding and just getting it a page so that you have control on your platform of kind of, because I knew about kind of the body of it, but the right rail itself is also something you're controlling on that. environment as well, which is,
That's right.
you know, one, prevents any competitive issues, right? I don't want, you know, competitor to these headphones showing a Bose showing up next to the Sony ad, but so you completely control that, and you do that within there. So a publisher just needs to give you what? Just a page template that's kind of free of all the other elements.
Yeah. So obviously that's really important. We've scaled this over thousands of sites. There's no way we would have been able to do that with a bunch of, deep tech integration on each site. So what we do is we place a single tag in the header, okay, on every page. You do not need to worry about individual placements. That's all configured within the platform. And then you reserve at least one page for the content. And again, it works the same way. You just create an empty page. I'll show you what that looks like. Now I'm totally going off script here. I'm not supposed
That's
to.
okay.
That's what happens
off script, but
when you invite a product guy in. So there you go. So you can see that this is the only page that lives in Entrepreneur's CMS. It's just a blank experience with our tag in the header, and we actually insert that directly in. So you can see what that looks like.
Good. All right.
And that allows us to scale it. Yeah.
Back on script.
Yeah. So that allows us to scale it. And that's what we call the content landing page. And you can actually have multiple variations of that, as I noted, some with a right rail, some without a right rail. Oftentimes it's also used as a sales tool. So you can say, hey, do you want the premium content landing page experience? The fancy background or whatever. So these are all options that we give to the publisher. Okay, so we talked about creative management, all sorts of different ad formats, including basic click out type ad formats or managed within this environment, video and everything else. So once you've got your creative, you actually need to run a campaign, right? So we've got all of the core trafficking tools that you would need to run a campaign within the platform. And so here's that Sony campaign, and I want to actually create a new line item here, what we call a budget. So you can take a look at that process. Cool. Okay, so all of the stuff that you would expect for trafficking, right? Deliver by budgets, impressions, share a voice. You can even run house ads this way. You can set your rates, like high rates, rate types. So this is important as well. Again, we've really tried to rethink from the ground up, not just the creative experience, but how you sell. We offer both reserved rate types like CPM, VCPM, so optimizing to viewability, and auction-based rate types. So like cost per click, cost per view. All of these things can compete for yield on the same inventory. That not only lets you use your inventory efficiently, which is, if you think about it, really important when you've got a feed with lots of different various kinds of slots in it. It also gives you flexibility in the way that you sell. So you can completely disconnect. Like, you don't have to worry about how your sales team prefers to sell. Is it on a cost per read? Is it on a cost per view? Is it on a VCPM? You don't have to worry about it. You can execute that all within the platform. Everything else runs normally, and then we yield optimize for the pub regardless of how it's sold. And then, here's that optimization. So I mentioned beyond just clicks, conversions, actions on the page, engagement, time on content, video completes, all sorts of optimization options for both creative and inventory optimization. And then the normal stuff you'd expect. Delivery speed, you can waterfall things out at different priorities. You can do forecasting built right in. Of course, targeting, you can manage fees if you have third-party fees that you want to tack on. Targeting is important. We've got lots of different options. We've even got a built-in audience library.
Talk to me about that. Explain that.
Yeah. So look, I mean, we're going into a world where third-party cookies are going away. More control is going to go to the publishers, more control around first-party data. Publishers are going to want to be able to take advantage of that first-party data directly within the platform. So publishers can use their first-party data to sell. They can do attribution within the platform. They can do retargeting. They can provide their own audiences. We actually have a built-in DMP that will use your first-party cookies as well. Or you can use a third-party tool, a third-party audience library. We're integrated with all of the biggies, and also working with the new identity standards as well. So all of that audience capability is built in. Again, it is an ad platform at the heart of it. So beyond just the creative, you have the ability to create a campaign with audience.
That's so now I'm actually going back to my analogy of the bicycle versus the car, right? Because again, you can stitch the ad piece together, perhaps, right? And we even create the kind of landing page, but all of those various models, frequency capping, reporting, and integration with kind of the data piece of this, that's a level of sophistication. And again, you kind of blew by it, but the attribution piece is again something that might be a real differentiator down the road. If you're able to say, look, you're not going to be able to measure as well in the post cookie world, post third party cookie world. I can help you measure that if run this way. So, and that's something you can do today, right? So that's kind of warm people up to the concept. Real interesting.
Yeah, that's right. I won't go through everything, but we've got all this stuff you'd expect: brand safety controls, etc. So again, you're going to be working with large brands. They're going to want third-party verification. You can actually track and verify nearly every event that happens within this ad. So they'll get full transparency. It's not just the impression and the click. It's all built in to the platform. So you just pick what you want, add your trackers by device, you're good to go. As we mentioned, conversion tracking. So if you want to have additional attribution beyond the landing page, we also have traditional conversion tracking attribution built right in. Okay, so that is the trafficking experience, and we can take a look at a few more things. All right, I looked at this already. Okay, the other thing I wanted to show here is reporting. So I've been, talking up a lot about how you get a richer experience, you get a lot of data. So how do you get that data out of the system? Well, actually, we've got a huge set of reporting capabilities built right in. And the thing that really bugged me the most in my previous life was these reporting tools where you'd say, I want the advertise, I want the vertical, I want thing, and then I'm going to come back tomorrow and wait for an email to arrive, and and then maybe open my results. Well, it turns out that it's a lot easier if you've got an interactive tool, and so I can actually just do that right here, which is the way I like it. So maybe I want standard impressions, and I just get to build my report interactively. And if I really want, maybe I'll even do it with a visualization. So that's all built into the platform, and I can break down in various ways. Maybe I want to break down by ad type. Let's see if this will give us something interesting to look at. So again, it's all interactive. It gives you a lot more data about what's going on and right away within your ad program. And this is also available through APIs as well.
Very good.
All right, so without going too deep, we've talked about the various ad executions. We talked about how we can manage creative and the different tools that we have to make that creative really shine. We talked about the tools, the fact that this is a end-to-end ad platform. We talked about reporting. If we had a lot more time, I'd probably mention that all of these ad formats could be sold programmatically. We also have demand offering for backfill. So Nativo provides backfill of the same kind of premium content. And we know that a lot of publishers are still working, I say it that way, still working with Google Ad Manager and certainly on their display side. So we work very nicely with Google Ad Manager as well. It's really up to the publisher whether they want to use our optimization tools or let Google Ad Manager handle all the flighting and pacing.
And so I guess, you work with many different publishers in terms of kind of the strategy here, right? So again, I think to your point, most publishers are going out with display/video products. one of the things that we saw in this past year is the need for people to kind of diversify revenue streams, right? And or create new products. So if I'm a publisher that's not doing this today, right, it seems pretty straightforward in terms of implementation, kind of covered that, right? So to get a template to you, it's about location. Again, I'm going to have to bring in editorial. I'm going to have to get people, from a design perspective, have to be happy. But again, you've worked with a lot of sites to do that. What you just kind of hit on that I kind of just had, kind of prompted this particular thought or direction I'm going into is that you can help fill that programmatically while I go out and figure out how I'm going to pitch that direct, right? So it's an existing piece. I can make revenue off of that, go out. And again, is this typically done as kind of a package, right? I mean, I would sit there and I mean, is there are marketers that just focus on this particular type of advertising? I guess I'm assuming there are probably some
Yeah,
that do, but a lot of other people kind of are thinking of it in the mix. I'm kind of curious your thoughts or experience.
yeah. Well, it turns out like there's all sorts of different kinds of content distribution that is happening out there, right? There are different groups that are doing content distribution, and there are also agencies that specialize in that sort of thing, even down to just simple PR, right? Like, sometimes people want to distribute PR beyond just like news aggregator sites, and they want to do it in a efficient way. So the dollars are there. It's just a matter of having an offering from the publisher side to capture those dollars.
Yeah. Are you finding that typically it's well, I guess you kind of answered this question, but like national versus local, I guess it could be just really kind of the mix. The part of it is that as a publisher, you've got to go out there and explain the proposition and create that kind of demand for that difference.
Yeah, one thing that's important to note, for especially on the local side, is that frequently local publications are not just a single publication. It's actually a group of local publications, each for different localities,
Yeah.
and they struggle to scale their programs because beyond like the rectangle 300 by 250 thing, like this thing actually scales across sites. So if you're operating multiple local sites, for example, or let's even multiple vertical sites, and you want to be able to have a more scalable offering, this will run that ad across those sites, which you couldn't do if you were embedding directly within the CMS or something like that.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Well, I think if anything, what you've been able to show is again that duct taping things together, putting it together versus kind of again having an enterprise solution. That this is certainly not display, and I think you shared some ideas there. I think that will spawn some ideas in terms of. I mean, again, as an operations person and someone who tries to help the business side with proposals, those advertisers that need something different and or again, I've had struggles with getting rich media done in a timely fashion. There's a part of it going like, just give me the assets. I'll make that work within this kind of environment,
Yeah.
and then the quick ability to preview it, show them, get sign off, you're up and running, and developing that out, I think is a strong proposition.
Yep.
If you don't mind, as a kind of a final question, then we will two final questions, and then we will go to Q&A. Business model, or what's the kind of pricing model is what I should say. What does that look like? Not asking you for numbers, just asking you, is it CPM? Is it fee? Like what's the
Yeah, so it's probably not that much different than what you would expect from other kind of similar platforms. And so obviously there are more components here. So yeah, a lot of times what you'll find is that you'll get like a bare metal ad server, and then you need to pay additionally for the contextual targeting capability, and then you'll need to pay additionally for DCO, and then you'll need to pay for measurement. And so when we have these conversations, like, oh well, but I pay this for the ad server. No.
Yeah.
All of that stuff is included. It's all part of the same price. It's all part of the same package. So we try and make that simpler as well.
Very good. And if someone is interested in learning more, who should they call? Is there a sales email address or info, or anything on the website? Where would you want to point people?
Yeah, you can go to the website, fill out a form, and that'll introduce you to our sales team, or you can send an email to publishers@nativo.com.
Great. We'll put that information with the video. Eugene, thank you for walking us through all that. That was fantastic. Thank you.
Sure, my pleasure.